We are living through this incredibly strange paradox right now when you look at the digital landscape. And I want you, the listener, to really think about this for a second. Building an app today it's arguably easier than it has ever been in human history.
Oh, absolutely. It's night and day compared to even a decade ago.
Right. You have these massive no-code platforms that have matured into total powerhouses. You've got endless libraries of open source frameworks. And of course, you've got AI literally writing complex boilerplate code and spinning up entire backends in like a matter of seconds. We've completely democratized the creation process.
Yeah, the barrier to entry is effectively gone.
Exactly. And yet, actually getting a single human being to use that app once you've built it, that feels nearly impossible. It has basically become the modern developer's ultimate nightmare.
It's the classic, if a tree falls in the forest scenario.
Yeah.
But amplified to just a terrifying degree for anyone trying to build software today. Yeah. The reality is, you can build the most elegant, highly functional application imaginable. You can deploy it seamlessly to the cloud, and then you are met with absolute deafening silence.
It's brutal. Just crickets.
Right, because the attention economy is completely saturated. Since the barriers to creation have basically dropped to zero, the barriers to distribution and discovery have naturally skyrocketed. You are competing for screen time against multi-billion-dollar conglomerates who have optimized like every single pixel of their platforms to trap user attention.
Man, I remember talking to an indie developer last month, and he spent 6 months building this genuinely brilliant productivity tool. He launched it, and the only people who downloaded it were his mom and 2 of his friends.
Ouch. Yeah, that's a very familiar story.
I mean, he ended up spending thousands of dollars on social media ads just to get a few dozen trial users. The customer acquisition cost, the CO, was utterly unsustainable. And well, that user acquisition crisis is exactly what we're tackling today.
It's the most pressing issue in tech right now, for sure.
Definitely. So the mission of this deep dive is to deconstruct a very specific, highly unconventional case study that might actually hold the blueprint for solving this. We are looking at a source detailing the May 2026 beta launch of something called CiDi Games on the Pi network.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
It really is. Now, on the surface, a lot of people might hear that and think, okay, a new gaming platform, cool, move on. But we are going to extract the underlying architecture of this launch because it serves as a masterclass in how you bypass the traditional, impossibly expensive user acquisition treadmill entirely.
Bypassing that treadmill, it requires a fundamental rethinking of how a product actually reaches a user. When you analyze the architecture of this specific launch, it becomes really clear that we aren't just looking at a clever marketing campaign.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Exactly. We are looking at a structural shift in how a digital product finds its audience. It challenges the foundational assumptions of the current App Store monopolies.
So just to map out where we are heading for you guys listening, we're going to break down the anatomy of this platform because the technical structure itself is what allows for everything else. Then we'll examine the organic traction metrics, which, frankly, I was highly skeptical of at first.
As any sane person should be.
Right. And then we're going to explore this community staking model that completely shifts the power dynamics of how an app proves its worth. And finally, we will dig into how these brand new AI coding tools plug directly into this ecosystem without turning into, like, a fragmented mess.
It's a lot to cover, but it all connects.
It does. But before we get to the massive user numbers, we have to understand the environment. We have to know what was actually built.
Because architecture dictates behavior. I mean, If we just look at the metrics in a vacuum, we miss the mechanism that actually generated them. Breaking down the product infrastructure is the necessary first step, because what launched wasn't a standalone application in the way we traditionally think of one.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds of this beta launch. In mid-May, CiDi Games, which operates as a portfolio company of Pi Network Ventures, by the way, they launched an instant access HTML5 gaming platform natively within the Pi browser.
The native part is key there.
Absolutely. And they didn't just throw one hyper-casual game against the wall to see if it stuck. They launched with an initial library of 10 different games spanning casual, puzzle, idle, action, and competitive genres. But the games themselves almost feel secondary to the wrapper they put around them.
What do you mean by wrapper?
Well, they built in skill-based tournaments, platform-wide progression through a metric they call the CiDi score, and this persistent virtual companion called the Pi ELF that lives in an elf continent. It feels like they didn't just build an arcade cabinet, they tried to build the whole arcade, the tickets, and the prize counter all at once.
What is structurally important here is that use of HTML5 integrated directly into a native browser environment. Let's talk about the friction of traditional app discovery for a second.
Yeah, please, because it's awful.
It really is.
Yeah.
Typically, a user sees an ad, clicks it, and gets redirected entirely out of their current context to an app store. Then, you wait for a 500 megabyte download to finish, you open the app, you get hit with a prompt to create an account, verify an email, accept terms of service.
And allow tracking across other apps. Don't forget that one.
Right, exactly. And the drop-off rate at every single one of those steps is catastrophic. You lose half your potential users at each screen. By building an HTML5 platform within the Pi browser, they eliminated the install barrier entirely. You tap, and you are instantly in the experience.
That context switching is the silent killer of apps. It's exhausting as a user. I mean, I'm browsing an article, I see a game, but the moment I realize I have to leave the app I'm in to go download something else, I just abandon it.
Most people do.
But instant access is only half the battle, right? Sure, you got me to load the game, but HTML5 games have historically been incredibly disposable. You play in a waiting room, you close the tab, and you literally never think about it again. How does this CiDi score or this PiELF companion actually solve that retention problem?
It solves it through identity persistence. In a typical web game, you are essentially a ghost. You have no history, no investment. But by integrating a platform-wide score, the CiDi score, and a persistent digital companion, the PiELF, they are attaching your gameplay to a persistent digital identity.
Oh, I see. So it carries over.
Yes, your actions have cumulative value. When you play a puzzle game, it feeds into your overarching status within the CiDi Games ecosystem. It transforms disposable entertainment into an investment in your digital persona. And because it's tied to your Pioneer identity within the broader Pi ecosystem, that status actually carries weight.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's the difference between going to an amusement park where you buy a one-off ticket for a roller coaster versus an amusement park where every ride you go on levels up a customized avatar that follows you around the park.
That's a great analogy.
You start to care about the avatar, which
Yeah.
makes you want to go on more rides. And the infrastructure they built actually allows other developers to come in and build new rides, new games that plug into that exact same avatar system, right?
Exactly. They're providing developer infrastructure for other Pi-integrated games. This is where a single application evolves into a platform-level experience. They are solving the retention problem for themselves, but they're also, in a way, commoditizing that retention and offering it to third-party developers.
It creates a super sticky ecosystem.
Very sticky.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Building a sticky, low-friction HTML5 theme park is great in theory, but we are back to the core problem. How do you get anyone to walk through the front gates in the first place?
The million-dollar question, literally.
Yeah, literally millions. In the traditional mobile world, you have to feed the algorithmic beast. You spend all that VC money on Google and Meta ads just to force your app in front of eyeballs. But the traction metrics from this beta launch tell a very different story. Let's actually look at the hard numbers.
The empirical data here is what validates the entire architectural approach. Let's break down the volume they achieved.
So the data from the source shows that in less than 1 week after this beta went live, CiDi Games pulled in over 81,000 active pioneers. And this wasn't just a localized test. This user base spanned across 160 different countries and regions.
That's a massive geographic spread for week one.
Truly massive. And that influx resulted in over 1.2 million total game sessions. Furthermore, 21,000 of those users actively opted into the competitive tournaments. But here's the detail that honestly made me highly suspicious at first. All of this was completely organic.
Meaning zero ad spent.
Exactly. There was zero promotion from the official Pi Network accounts. The users discovered the app entirely on their own, meaning the user acquisition cost, that massive hurdle that bankrupts indie devs, was effectively zero.
For anyone operating in the consumer software space, acquiring 81,000 global users in 7 days with a customer acquisition cost of zero is, well, it's fundamentally paradigm breaking.
Right.
Normally, achieving that kind of velocity requires a heavily capitalized marketing engine. You're paying a premium for every single impression.
And this is exactly where I have to push back, though. Because in tech, organic is a very loaded word.
Oh, for sure.
Usually when a startup claims they grew organically, what they actually mean is they got incredibly lucky with the YouTube algorithm, or, they had a stealth influencer campaign on TikTok that they just aren't disclosing as marketing spend.
Right, the fake viral growth.
Exactly. Viral anomalies happen, but they aren't repeatable business models. So how does an ecosystem actually engineer a zero-cost discovery environment without relying on blind luck? I mean, a million game sessions don't just materialize out of thin air.
Your skepticism is totally warranted, but it assumes the discovery happened on the open internet. The fundamental difference here is the structural advantage of the Pi ecosystem itself.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, the Pi network has spent years cultivating a user base of over 60 million engaged pioneers. That is the critical variable here. These aren't just passive internet browsers. They are a pre-assembled, massive global audience that is already operating within the Pi browser.
So the network itself acts as the top of the funnel.
Precisely. The Pi ecosystem itself serves as the discovery engine. If an app provides genuine utility, whether that's a tool, a service, or in this case, interactive entertainment and social connection, it taps directly into a massive, actively circulating current of users.
They don't have to go find the users. The users are already there.
Right. The users are actively looking for the next piece of utility within the Pi ecosystem directory. CiDi Games didn't have to pull 81,000 people off the open web, convince them to download a browser, and then convince them to play a game. They simply opened a door in a hallway where 60 million people were already walking.
Okay, that makes the mechanics of the viral growth make a lot more sense. It's a captive audience, but I mean that in the best possible way. The users are already authenticated. They already have their Pi wallet set up. They are already culturally invested in finding things to do in the ecosystem.
The friction is just gone.
Totally gone. So when a high-fidelity platform like CiDi Games pops up, it's not an intrusion. It's exactly what they're looking for. And the fact that 21,000 of those users immediately jumped into the skill-based tournaments proves it. They weren't just clicking and bouncing. They were deeply engaging with the core loop of the product.
Yeah, that conversion rate to the tournament tier, roughly 25% of the initial user base, is a staggering metric for a week one beta. It completely validates the HTML5 low-friction architecture we discussed. They removed the barriers to entry, provided immediate utility, and the existing network provided the scale.
But let's ground this in the harsh reality of running a software business, okay? Because 1.2 million game sessions in a week is an incredible milestone, but it's also an incredible server load.
Oh, absolutely. AWS bills add up fast.
Compute is not free. Bandwidth is not free. It absolutely does not matter how organically you acquire a million users if those users don't somehow generate the revenue required to keep the lights on. A zero-cost user acquisition model is useless if the lifetime value of the user is also zero.
That's the classic Web 2.0 trap.
Exactly. So how does an organic free-to-play ecosystem sustain itself? Traditionally, this is where the developer gets desperate and starts bombarding the user with unskippable video ads.
That is the eternal tension in consumer apps. Monetization almost always acts as a corrosive force against the user experience. You build a great product, you get the users, and then you have to degrade the product with aggressive monetization just to survive.
It's depressing, honestly.
It is. But examining the Pi ecosystem's approach reveals a very different philosophical and technical model for revenue.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because the data on this launch notes that CiDi Games began recording a, quote, significant number of ads shown almost immediately after going live, and they executed this by plugging directly into the Pi ad network.
Right.
But what fascinated me was the explicit mandate attached to this capability. The architecture of the Pi ecosystem dictates that this monetization model only functions optimally, and I'm paraphrasing the core philosophy from the source here, as long as creators build utility-based engaging apps.
That word utility is everything here.
It is. It treats monetization not as an entitlement just because you built an app, but as a direct byproduct of providing real utility.
That distinction is paramount. Consider the traditional web model. Monetization is frequently intrusive and preemptive. I mean, you navigate to a recipe blog, and before you can even see the ingredients, you are forced to close 3 pop-ups, accept cookies, and watch a video ad.
I hate that so much. Just let me see how to make the cookies.
Exactly. The developer is trying to extract value before they have provided any utility. But the Pi ad network flips that incentive structure. Because CiDi Games didn't launch with a massive financial deficit from buying users, they weren't forced into predatory ad placements.
Right. They weren't desperate to recoup CAC.
Exactly. They could focus purely on building the mechanics of the 10 games, the tournament infrastructure, the Pi ELF companion. And because that high-quality utility drove 1.2 million genuine, friction-free sessions, the ad impressions naturally followed as a secondary effect.
It's the difference between building a toll booth on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere versus integrating a ticket price into a high-speed rail passport.
Well, I like that.
Right. With the dirt road toll booth, you have to spend all your money just putting up billboards trying to convince people to drive out to your road, and when they finally get there, they're annoyed they have to stop and pay. You've created friction to extract value.
Yeah, it's a terrible user experience.
But with the high-speed rail, the infrastructure provides such incredible utility getting people across the country in an hour that the monetization is just a seamless part of the journey. The foot traffic is guaranteed by the utility of the station itself.
That is a much more accurate metaphor for technical integration. The utility of the station guarantees the traffic, and the Pi ad network provides the infrastructure to monetize that traffic sustainably. And there's another crucial layer here too, the quality of the audience.
What do you mean by quality?
Well, the Pi ad network allows developers to monetize immediately with verified, real human users. The open internet is plagued by click farms and bot traffic, which heavily dilutes ad value.
Oh, sure. Advertisers hate paying for bot clicks.
Exactly. By serving ads to verified pioneers, the engagement data is clean. This provides the developer with a dual-purpose engine. It generates the revenue to scale the servers, but it also provides an immaculate stream of behavioral data to refine the games and figure out what the audience actually wants next.
It creates a closed, positive feedback loop. High utility attracts organic users. Organic users generate clean ad impressions. That ad revenue funds better development, which increases the utility, which attracts more users.
It's highly sustainable.
But ad revenue, even when implemented natively, is still a top-down mechanism. The developer places the ad, the user views it. But this ecosystem also introduces a revolutionary bottom-up mechanism for app visibility. And this, honestly, fundamentally threatens the entire concept of the modern app store. We need to talk about the staking phenomenon. Staking introduces a radically different crypto-economic and social dynamic to how digital products are discovered and valued. It completely removes the opaque algorithms from the equation.
Let's start with the hard numbers from the beta, just to anchor this.
Mm.
The ecosystem features something called Pi Ecosystem Directory Staking. According to the data, CiDi Games saw its app ranking boosted by an unbelievable 3.19 million Pi staked on its platform.
Which is a staggering amount for a new launch.
Right. That volume propelled it to become one of the top staked apps in the entire Pi ecosystem. But the detail that matters most isn't just the sheer volume of the Pi, it's the origin. The vast majority of this Pi was staked by the community itself.
That's the paradigm shift.
It wasn't the developers artificially pumping their own metrics with venture capital money. It was individual pioneers throwing their own digital weight behind a product they genuinely liked. To understand the gravity of that, we really have to unpack what staking actually means in this specific context. Technically, it is an optional mechanism where pioneers and businesses can lock up a portion of their Pi resources to support the apps they use and enjoy within the ecosystem interface.
So they can't use that Pi for anything else while it's staked.
Right, it's locked. But practically and philosophically, it acts as a decentralized, highly visible signal of trust in utility.
Honestly, looking at this, I have to ask, are we witnessing the death of the traditional five-star app review? Because let's face it, the traditional review system is fundamentally broken.
Broken is an understatement.
Yeah. An anonymous five-star rating on an app store is cheap. It costs the user absolutely nothing to click 5 stars, and we all know the open internet is flooded with review bombing and bot farms that just manipulate those scores. You simply cannot trust them anymore.
No, you really can't.
But staking actual digital resources, that requires literal skin in the game. You are tying your own assets to your opinion.
You've identified the exact vulnerability of the current web. Attention and value curation are just completely broken. We are drowning in software choices, and the curation mechanisms we used to rely on, like the 5-star review, have lost all credibility.
Because they're too easily gamed?
Exactly. Staking replaces cheap talk with verifiable conviction. It shifts the power of app discovery away from the black box algorithms of centralized gatekeepers who often rank apps based on who paid them the most advertising money, by the way.
Oh, for sure. It's pay to play.
Right. And it places it directly into the hands of the community.
But break down the psychology for the user here, for you listening. If I'm a pioneer, why would I lock up my Pi? What is the risk and reward for me? If I stake on a game and the game turns out to be terrible, what happens?
The primary incentive for the user is ecosystem health and personal utility. If you find an app that genuinely improves your daily digital experience, like a great gaming platform, you want that app to succeed, receive updates, and remain available.
Okay, that makes sense.
By staking on it, you boost its visibility in the directory, helping it attract more users and generate more sustainable revenue. You are acting as a curator for your own digital neighborhood. The risk is the opportunity cost. The Pi you have staked is locked and cannot be used for other transactions while it is supporting that app.
Ah, so there's a real consequence to your choice.
Exactly. Therefore, you are only going to stake on applications that you truly believe provide long-term value. It filters out the spam and the low-effort clones almost immediately.
It's a democracy, but it's a democracy weighted by conviction. You aren't just casually casting a vote, you are backing your vote with a tangible asset. And put yourself in the shoes of the developer for a second.
Oh, it must be incredible.
Right. You launch a beta, and within a week, your users have collectively locked up 3.19 million Pi just to tell the rest of the network, hey, this app is incredible. That has to be the most profound, validating feedback a creator could ever receive.
So the ultimate market validation.
It proves mathematically that you haven't just captured fleeting attention. You have earned active, invested support.
It perfectly aligns the incentives between creator and consumer. The developer is deeply motivated to build incredible utility because that is the only metric that earns organic traction and community staking support. You cannot fake utility when it requires the user to lock up resources.
And what about the user side?
Conversely, the user is motivated to seek out and stake on the best possible apps because it enriches the overall ecosystem they inhabit. The user is no longer a metric to be exploited, they are an active participant in the app's success.
Okay, so let's synthesize this from the perspective of an indie developer sitting at their desk right now, pulling their hair out over a failed launch.
There are a lot of them out there today.
Too many. So you realize there is this massive network. You have an audience of 60 million authenticated users. The discovery problem is solved by the sheer gravity of the network. The monetization mechanism is natively built in and rewards utility. The curation and ranking are driven transparently by community staking rather than an opaque App Store algorithm.
It sounds like a developer's utopia.
It does sound like a utopia, but here is the massive, glaring challenge. Walled gardens are notoriously brutal to build for.
Oh, definitely. The learning curve can be steep.
Yeah, developers absolutely despise having to learn a completely bespoke proprietary coding language or framework just to deploy on one specific network. If Pi requires me to throw out my entire tech stack and spend 6 months learning how to build a, quote, Pi app, I'm not going to do it. How is Pi avoiding the graveyard of forgotten proprietary platforms?
That is the exact friction point that historically kills alternative ecosystems. If the barrier to entry for the developer is too high, the platform just stagnates. But this brings us to the most technologically timely aspect of this entire case study.
Let's get into it.
Pi hasn't just solved the distribution and curation side. They have actively and aggressively streamlined the creation side by embracing the broader AI revolution.
And this is where the documentation on the developer tools gets incredibly interesting. They detail the rollout of tools on PiApp Studio, and they explicitly highlight the integration of external AI coding assistants.
External being the key word there.
Exactly. And they aren't talking about some obscure in-house AI. They are name-dropping the absolute heavy hitters of the industry. They specifically mention tools like Codex, Claude Code, Replit, Cursor, and Lovable.
Those are top-tier development environments right now.
They are. They are essentially telling developers, we know you are already using these massive AI models to generate your code. Don't stop. Keep using them.
We have to examine the workflow this creates because the paradigm of software engineering has fundamentally shifted in the last couple of years.
How so, for those who might not code every day?
Well, a solo developer today can use a tool like Claude or Cursor to architect complex application logic, design intricate user interfaces, and build the core functionality of an application in days rather than months. The AI handles the syntax and the boilerplate.
It's like having an army of junior developers at your fingertips.
Exactly. The bottleneck is no longer writing the code. The bottleneck is integrating that code into a functional ecosystem, handling the payments, the authentication, the server deployment.
Yes. You can have Claude write a brilliant HTML5 game, but Claude can't magically wire that game into a global payment network or handle user authentication securely.
Not yet, anyway.
Right. But the workflow Pi outlines solves this. You use Claude or Cursor to build the app, and then you bring it into PiApp Studio. From there, you use ready-to-go AI prompts provided by Pi to integrate the Pi SDK, verify the environment setup, and implement Pi payments.
It's incredibly elegant.
It's like having an incredibly fast robot build the entire frame of a house, pour the foundation, and put up the drywall. But a house is useless if it doesn't have electricity and plumbing.
Without those, it's just a wooden box.
Exactly. So Pi App Studio acts as the master electrician. It hands the robot the exact ready-made blueprints to seamlessly wire that newly built house into the city's power grid, water supply, and security systems.
That analogy perfectly captures the division of labor. We are witnessing the true democratization of software creation. Anyone with a coherent idea and a natural language prompt can generate an application now.
It's wild to think about.
It is. But until this point, that newly generated AI software was stranded on a digital island. Deploying it securely and finding users remained impossible hurdles. This specific Pi App Studio pipeline bridges the gap brilliantly.
It connects the dots.
It allows a small team like CiDi Games to leverage the open internet's best AI to build the product, while Pi App Studio handles the complex, highly specific deployment into an ecosystem that already has the users and the economy built in.
It's like they've paved a superhighway directly from your local Cursor IDE right into the heart of a 60 million user metropolis. You don't have to navigate the wilderness of user acquisition anymore.
You bypass the wilderness entirely.
You build the logic with your AI of choice, you prompt the integration with Pi App Studio, and boom, your app is authenticated, ready to accept Pi payments, and positioned to be discovered and staked by real people.
It's remarkably efficient.
But that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Once this AI-assisted app is deployed, what exactly is it plugging into? We need to look closely at the underlying grid, because it's not just a standalone app floating in a void, it becomes a node in a much broader infrastructure.
The deployment phase is merely the connection point. To truly comprehend the value proposition this offers to a developer, we have to analyze the full-stack ecosystem integration that occurs the exact millisecond that application goes live on the Pi network.
Looking at the architecture of the platform in the source, the suite of native infrastructure components that these apps automatically inherit is just massive. The ecosystem provides integrated global payments, direct hooks into the Pi wallet, access to the Pi ad network, and native social network access.
It's a comprehensive suite.
It really is. And we know that CiDi Games, working closely with Pi, is utilizing this completely integrated environment to gather high-quality feedback, expand their library of 10 games, and discover where they can build new utility.
They're iterating based on actual usage.
Yeah. When I look at this list of integrations, it looks like the ultimate integrated garden. Because let's look at how the rest of the internet works. Traditional developers are basically plumbers duct taping together a dozen different fragmented services.
The duct tape internet. I love that term.
Right. You need Stripe for your credit card processing. You need AppLovin or Google AdSense for your monetization. You need Auth or Facebook for your single sign-on. You need AWS for your hosting.
And none of them talk to each other perfectly.
Exactly. It is a patchwork quilt of third-party APIs, and every single time one of those companies updates their terms of service or changes an endpoint, your entire app breaks.
It's a maintenance nightmare.
But here, it seems like all the critical plumbing is entirely native and tied directly to the user's Pioneer identity from day one.
Your assessment of the duct tape internet is entirely accurate, and it highlights the greatest source of friction for both developers and users today. Context switching and the fragmentation of identity and payments are massive liabilities.
For everyone involved.
Every time an app requires a user to create a new account, remember a new password, or pull a physical credit card out of their wallet to type 16 digits into a new untrusted payment gateway, the developer loses a catastrophic percentage of their user base. It is a severely leaky funnel.
And from the engineering side, every single third-party API you integrate is a potential point of failure, a massive security vulnerability, and a constant drain on your dev team's time just keeping it updated.
Precisely. By unifying global payments, secure wallet infrastructure, and ad network, and social authentication natively at the platform level, the Pi ecosystem eliminates the need for that fragmented duct tape approach.
So you don't need 5 different subscriptions just to run the backend.
Right. The developer doesn't have to spend a month arguing with a payment processor's API or building a secure, encrypted password hashing system for user accounts. All of that incredibly complex, high-risk infrastructure is inherited simply by deploying on the network.
It's handed to them on a silver platter.
Basically.
Yeah.
This means the developer can focus 100% of their cognitive load and their AI tools on iterating the core product. CiDi Games didn't have to build a payment gateway. They focused on building a better puzzle game.
They focused on refining the CiDi score.
Exactly. They focus on expanding the elf continent, they focus on the utility, while the overarching ecosystem handles the infrastructure.
It is a massive fundamental shift in how computing resources and human capital are allocated. You stop building the plumbing and you start building the actual house.
It's a much better use of time and talent.
And because the user is already authenticated with their Pi wallet and their underlying Pioneer identity, the transition through the app's lifecycle is entirely frictionless. The journey from discovering the app organically, to playing the game, to viewing a native ad, to making an in-app purchase, to finally staking Pi on the app to boost its ranking, it is a single, seamless, uninterrupted flow of value and attention.
And that seamless flow is the precise mechanism that allowed a relatively simple HTML5 beta launch to capture 81,000 global users and 1.2 million sessions in a single week without spending a dime on marketing.
It's almost hard to wrap your head around, honestly.
The friction was systematically eradicated from both the developer side and the user side simultaneously. It is a textbook example of synergistic ecosystem design outperforming a fragmented open market.
It really is incredible to unpack. So let's take a step back and synthesize everything we've explored today. We started this deep dive looking at a 10-game beta launch called CiDi Games. But by dissecting the architecture beneath those games, we uncovered what looks like a comprehensive blueprint for the next evolution of app deployment.
We saw how a true platform-level design, utilizing HTML5 and persistent digital identity, can create a deeply sticky, engaging environment that actually solves user retention.
Yeah, no more ghost users.
Right. We examined how integrating directly into a pre-existing, actively engaged user base of over 60 million pioneers completely neutralizes the most expensive problem in the tech industry, customer acquisition costs.
Which is huge.
And we explored how genuine utility drives sustainable, non-predatory monetization through a native ad network.
We also unpacked the profound psychology and economics of community staking, and how requiring actual skin in the game might just be the decentralized cure for the broken, easily manipulated app review systems we rely on today.
I really think it could be.
And finally, we saw how the seamless integration of external AI coding tools like Claude and Cursor, when combined with the Pi App Studio, allows a solo developer to instantly plug their creation into a fully integrated global payment and social infrastructure without having to build the plumbing from scratch.
It represents a profound philosophical and technical shift from the fragmented, high-cost, high-friction model of the traditional mobile web. It creates an entirely self-contained, frictionless loop of software creation, organic discovery, deep engagement, and sustainable value exchange.
So for you listening, I want you to take a moment and reflect on your own experiences navigating the digital world lately. Think about the friction you encounter on a daily basis.
It's everywhere.
Whether you are a user who is completely overwhelmed by having 100 different accounts, 100 different passwords, and subscriptions spread across a dozen fragmented apps, or whether you are a creator, a developer who is just exhausted and demoralized by the sheer financial cost of trying to find an audience for your hard work.
Both sides are hurting right now.
They really are. The paradigm we've discussed today offers a highly compelling, fully functional alternative to that chaos. I highly suggest you open up the Pi browser and explore the CiDi Games beta for yourself. Experience what that HTML5 instant access actually feels like when there is no download barrier. See what an integrated, friction-free ecosystem looks like in practice.
Experiencing the user flow firsthand is often the most effective way to truly comprehend the underlying architecture. It takes the abstract technical concepts we've discussed today, utility mandates, frictionless deployment, persistent identity, and makes them incredibly concrete.
Exactly. Nothing beats firsthand experience. Now, before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, something that naturally builds on the architecture we've explored today.
I love a good thought experiment.
If decentralized ecosystems like Pi can offer instant organic distribution to millions of people globally, purely based on the actual utility of the application and the community's willingness to stake their own resources to curate it, what happens to the traditional multi-billion-dollar user acquisition and advertising industry?
Wow. Yeah, that's a big question.
If the users themselves become the ultimate algorithmic curators, the true discoverers and the financiers of the digital tools they love, do the old centralized gatekeepers of the app stores simply become obsolete? Because if building an app is now easier than ever with AI and finding a massive global audience is no longer an impossible financial hurdle, then maybe, just maybe, the modern developer's ultimate nightmare is finally coming to an end.